Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. The last few years, we've been hearing a lot about supply chain issues and inventory problems, shortages of everything from baby food to diesel fuel. Well, if you're a driver, you may have noticed that the new and used car market has been affected by all this economic chaos. So what's going on in the auto industry? Right now, are electric cars here to stay? Are they taking over? What about used car market? Right now, prices are maybe up, maybe down. Is this a good time to shop? Well, if you're confused, you're in luck. Paul Stasiak, who is president of the Niagara Frontier Auto Dealers Association, is my guest on today's show, and Paul is here to answer all of our questions. Right, Paul?
Thank you, Phil. Confused and luck at the same sentence.
Well, welcome to the show. Let's start with the past couple of years. Things, new cars were scarce because of supplies. And is that kind of still the case, or have most manufacturers recovered from that?
That's a great question, Phil. It's a blend. Quite honestly, some manufacturers have at least been able to supplement their existing inventory, unlike the last 14 months. Quite candidly, our dealers are very happy. Our industry is very happy. We got through it. When I say we got through it, we didn't get through with new vehicles. Our dealers and our industry was forced to shift to used, as you correctly stated. So the dealers went out in Western New York, secured as many used cars as they can to supplement those people, particularly coming off lease. Remember, we're a very strong lease payment market. So when that customer came off a lease, they didn't have anywhere to go to replace that lease, or limited places to go. So the supply chain shortage is still real. It's still here. Some lines have been able to replenish, while others are still struggling.
And how does that affect, it's kind of like a ripple effect throughout the entire industry. Used cars are affected, the prices, and the prices of new cars, depending on the make and as you say, some manufacturers have done better than others when it comes to recovering. Right now, if you're looking for a car, if you're in the market, and say you're looking for a new car, how do you feel your way through this? People normally go for a particular or one or two makes of cars that they're out looking for new cars. How do they know? I mean, can you do research on?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a whole new information highway. Everything in society is a different information highway. More and more consumers are going online. They're going through social media markets to try to identify what they want. Then they look to see where they can get it. The one thing about our business, though, is people aren't doing the Amazon drop-off like people assume they are. People still want to get in the car to see, I'm a big guy. I got to know if I fit. Do my legs fit? Do my drive fit? Is it comfortable? Is it got enough space? How's the ride? So they do a little of their pre-shopping online, try to identify what they want, where they have it, who might have it, and then they gravitate back to the dealership or to events like our auto show, where we think is going to be a terrific opportunity for those people to at least see the car they haven't been able to see for 14 months.
Well, I'm going to pick up on what you just said. I mean, the internet has changed the way a lot of people do shopping. They look and see what, prices are to the dealers, and, what conceivably a good deal is supposed to be. And I've heard it both ways. Some dealers say, hey, our best friend is the internet. You go and you become an educated shopper, and you come in, and then you'll know that we're doing a good, deal for you. And other dealers, I suspect, opinion might be different on internet shoppers, because people come in with kind of a false sense of knowledge that, they know what the dealer can make on a car or what they should be charging or whatever. And there's
Phil, I tell all my friends, everybody says, well, I'm going to look online and see what they paid for it. If you bought jewelry, the price of gold is high. The price of gold is down. And I don't mean jewelry. The gold bullion is down or up. It varies. That doesn't affect the price of the labor that goes into the construction of it, the design of it, the fitting of it. So there's a lot more to it. Dealers post prices on that day's window, and it's a commodity. That vehicle could sell in 20 minutes, 24 hours. That vehicle that went online might be gone. The next closest vehicle might have more equipment on it, might have less equipment on it. So use it as a benchmark, but don't use it as the end all, is what I tell my family, my friends. We will tell a tremendous amount of people at the auto show. If you don't see it here, look it up, see what it is, contact the dealer to see how they can best procure it, secure it, and then help you receive it in a delivery. So it's a wide variance of, same as computer technology, and I want to say information comfort. I'm not a technology wizard. I might go on and look at things, and all my friends might be laughing on the show now, but seriously, they still got to talk to somebody and find out if that fits. There's also financing variables. How is your credit? That price they might have quoted you varies based upon the credit you have. Do you have debt? Do you have an overloaded payment? Are you coming through the COVID where you carried excessive debt? That all factors into the lending institutions, not the dealer. So there's multiple factors, Phil.
You know, with the interest rates, and we talked a little bit before the show about how the interest rates are going right through the roof, how has that affected the car industry? Have those high interest rates, first of all, can the manufacturers do anything to supplement that? And has that really put a damper on people shopping for cars because of?
Well, I mean, I see the numbers. I don't think it's put a damper on it. I think it's been an awakening for many customers, particularly lease customers. I mean, they really benefited from a low interest rate, heavy availability, more rebates on the vehicles, higher the supply, the higher the potential for the manufacturer to want to remove that vehicle. So he might throw a $500 incentive or a $1,000 incentive. So a lease customer coming in Western New York has to be real and anticipate his lease payments potentially going to go up. Just the cost of money. Has nothing to do with the cost of the car. Has nothing to do with, quote unquote, a margin from the dealer. It's no different than a home. If you buy a $150,000 home and you have a 3% mortgage, $150,000 loan with a 7% mortgage, that payment is drastically different. And that's what we're contending with now, is educating all of our consumers to what the realization is with a different economic window. And the supply shortage is another issue.
Now, you mentioned leasing, and I've always been a little bit uneducated when it comes to the advantages of leasing versus the disadvantages. And I'm the kind of guy who likes to own my car. I like to be able to put as many miles on it as I want, and not have somebody looking over my shoulder saying you have a certain quota of miles, and above that you pay extra. Can you tell me who a typical lease customer would be that would get benefits, and what the benefits are for leasing as opposed to owning?
Phil, I mean, it's personal preference, and you're right. I will correct you when you say restrictions on how their mileage is. Mm-hmm. Our dealers are very, very astute in trying to identify the driver's needs. There's a huge benefit if somebody doesn't drive a lot of miles on a lease, because they can turn that vehicle in 3 years, still have equity in the vehicle, and still maintain a low payment. Dealers and programs are geared around 10,000 mile leases, 12,000 mile leases, 15,000 miles. I'm a person that buys extra miles up front for my lease, and I drive an excessive amount of mileage. So I do the Albany Shuffle and Washington Shuffle. So I might need 18,000 miles a year. I go in with the expectation of telling all my dealers, give me a quote with 18,000 miles. I have no desire to own it. I don't want to deal with the service, the maintenance, the disposition at the end. I know my payment is. I'm happy to pay that for a number of years. Customers like you that say, hey, I might drive it for 80,000 miles. Remember, you're still going to have some maintenance expense, some tire expense, some brake expense, some other work. So you have to balance out, what do I want? Other people just like to turn vehicles and have something newer 3, 4, 5 years. So that's a personal preference. Buffalo is a pretty aggressive and strong lease market because of that flexibility of mileage, because of the need for diversity or the want of diversity of vehicles every 3, 4 years. My wife wants a new car every 3 years or 4 years. She's deserved that new car every 3 or 4 years. It's not because the car's bad. The car's probably only got 30,000 miles on it. She wants a different style, maybe a different color, different seat, different comfort, just a different feel. So that's what the lease offers with no risk. They don't have to worry about the trade-in allowance. It's been afforded up front. The past couple of years, lease customers benefited because there was no new cars too. they had so much equity in their lease turning, it allowed them to lower their new lease payment if they could find a new car.
It used to be when leases first started to become popular, it was a business, benefit, the tax considerations and so on. Mostly now it's like what you're describing is you don't have to worry about maintenance. You get a new car every 3 years, and there's a certain convenience factor there. Is that the main advantage of leasing these days?
Yes, no question. No question at all. It's a maintenance-free payment. And that's how I tell my friends, if you want a fixed number for 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, this is the best way to go. You don't have to worry about tires and maintenance, and you're turning the car in before there's going to be any concern over excess wear and tear.
Now, getting back to the fluctuations in the supply chain, we're kind of, as we said at the beginning, we're kind of out of that for some manufacturers. Some have made up better than others. How has that affected generally the prices of cars? Because everybody's in competition,
Sure.
and cars and high-end cars may be affected more than lower priced cars. Is there a difference?
That supply chain has totally raised the price of vehicles. I don't care what vehicle line it is. I don't care what make, what model. Less drives the price up. And it drives the price up from the manufacturer to the dealer, thus the dealer to the consumer. If they're sending less product, they still have some production costs, but the dealer's cost of doing business went up. No different than, like you mentioned, diapers and baby food. It's tragic. It's a dynamic that occurs in any industry, and we're affected the same way. The housing market shut up 3-4 years ago because there wasn't inventory out there. Will it right itself? I don't have that answer, but I know if there's a surplus, the cost will come down. We see this pendulum starting to swing. Dealers are starting to get more inventory. That vehicle that might have been $30,000 might be $29,500, $23,000. They want to remove it. The manufacturer might buy a little deeper on the credit than he did when there was no inventory. The people that got hurt most in the supply chain shortage were those that were overextended. Yeah. They probably shouldn't have been looking at that car in the first place. And that little cost increase, the rate increased, that servicing put them in a little bit of a bad position. So our dealers pivoted. They put them in a used car to get them right, to help them get right, so that their next purchase, cycle, they're good.
Okay. Well, we're out of time in this segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about the shopping experience, used cars, electric cars. There's a lot to talk about. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest on this show is Paul Stasiak, who is president of the Niagara Frontier Auto Dealers Association, and we're talking all things cars. We're talking about new cars mostly in the first segment. Well, let's get to used cars, and we'll talk a little bit about electric cars. But the used car market, because of the challenges in the new car market, the supply chain challenges and the scarcity over the last few years, prices of new cars have gone up. And you said at the beginning of the show that the dealers around here kind of really stocked up on used cars. They went out and they got a lot of used cars. So the supply in this area is still good when it comes to used cars, right?
Yes. I think our dealers did a terrific job compared to the nation of identifying what our Western New York market wants to drive. And that's SUVs, crossovers, vehicles they need to move around in adverse weather. So while some of the other country was sitting back, I got to applaud all of our members because they were very aggressive early on, recognizing there'd be a shortage, and they addressed that for the multitude of the customers they had.
So when you're going to a dealer for shopping for used cars, how is that process different than looking at new cars? New cars are pretty straightforward, but used cars, there's a lot of elements to consider there with the history of the car and so on.
They do. There are two different purchases. New car, you're buying out of the wrapper, you have the warranty, you're going to get a period of time where you're maintenance free in all probability, unless it's a warranty repair. A used car buyer's got generally less of a budget, a little bit more flexible on the vehicle they drive. Their driving needs tend to be a little bit more subject to maintenance down the road, and they have to go on preparing for that. And most of our used car customers know that they're going to have some expectation. They might need tires quicker. They might need an oil change more frequently. They might need some maintenance that they weren't anticipating. Most of the industry now has a resource to provide a customer with comfort on the history of the vehicle. So that mystery has been changed over the last 6, 7 years. Phil, you'll know. They'll give you a history report. Was that vehicle in an accident? What was the severity accident? You know, was there 2 owners, 3 owners, 1 owner? Some dealers can actually and do a great job of telling you what the service history was. If that was their customer, you came in, they're going to say, hey, Paul Stasiak drove this car for 4 years. You know, he had regular routine oil changes. He did the maintenance on it, and the car is pretty pristine. Or I might have had a lease turn in, and they're buying a lease turn in. So the educational process on a used car requires a little bit more for our dealers, but I'm very proud that our members are very astute to that.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Now, this is in the past, a long time ago, American cars took it on the chin because the reputation for longevity was not as good as some of the foreign makes, the Japanese cars and so on. You know, you would hear that a good Japanese car would go for 150, 175,000 miles, where that same year American car would not reach that, maybe 100,000 miles or whatever. Have the American manufacturers managed to come up with, to specs with engineering and in competition with all the other manufacturers around the world?
You're not putting me on a spot because that's been a myth for many years. I mean, the word is perception.
Okay.
And let's talk about the word perception. Perception created by many was that import vehicle had more longevity, as opposed to domestic. That's never really been factual. The other perception is the import vehicle breaks down and costs more to repair than the domestic vehicle, which is not necessarily true either. So, it's that folklore. Is Josh Allen going to throw the ball is he going to be that fireballer, or is he going to be the guy that throws the interception? He's a great quarterback. He's got strengths and weaknesses at times. But ultimately, the body of that work is the same. In the car market, we're no different. I don't see, and we handle dispute resolution in our office. We have as many people have concerns on vehicles that are on domestic, import, European, Asian. I don't see a big diversity. There was on certain models back then. The recalls are designed for a reason. There's a problem with the car. There's a problem with a component on the car. And if the manufacturer can't fix it, the propensity to buy it back was greater. I can get into the Pinto with the carb. That was an exception, but it was a default in the factory production. It wasn't a default in the car. Conversely, the Ford Tempo, that lasted like a tank. My mother drove the thing for 160,000 miles when the Camry and the Accord were coming in. So I don't see it. I don't believe it. I don't buy into that perception and that theory. And I'm in it for 38 years.
Okay, well, with your experience, say you're shopping for a used car and you have a choice between a newer car with higher miles or an older car with very low miles. And as an inexperienced shopper, you wouldn't know which way to go, which has got the advantage.
I would say they weigh each other equally, and I'm not trying to be that Switzerland person. I'm going to look at how do I feel in a car? How do I feel with the drive? I mean, that newer car may not have the space that the older car does. Let's face it, old refrigerators last better than new ones. It's just the way it is. Older refrigerator has a different kind of a setting. It's the same thing on cars. I go with comfort, feel. I look at that service history report. Right. I do it all the time. I get a lot of calls. I don't sell cars. I probably should sell cars. I'd make a tremendous amount of money, but I tell people, ask for the service history report, ask for the report on the vehicle, make your decision, and don't look back. The worst thing you can do is say, I wish I would have bought that, wish I would have done that. So the dealers are governed by New York State lemon law. Most of them have terrific service departments with highly trained technicians. So if they sold something that wasn't factory ready, in all probability, they have to fix it anyway. because it's governed by some kind of lemon law or warranty. Remember, vehicles all have a 100,000-mile warranty now on their engine. Most of them are a powertrain 100,000 miles. So consumer doesn't have to worry whether it's a 2019 with 30,000 or 2016 with 50.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about electric cars. Electric cars have been in the news a lot lately. You know, people are talking about electric cars. And as a matter of fact, I own an electric car. So they're, you know, I'm kind of talking from a point of view of someone who has experience with the ups and with the downs. I've had a very interesting experience with my electric car. And I bought my electric car not to save the environment, but because there's certain efficiencies with not being tied to gasoline prices, which are, you know, fluctuate a lot, you know, more readily and easily than, say, electric utility prices. But in any event, tell me about how electric cars are affecting the market today.
You know, it's a new generation of buyer that's brought to the dealers. You talk about an unknown. People don't know how long their electric vehicle is going to last. They don't know how long their battery will work. They don't know the optimization of the battery in cold weather versus warm weather. You and I talked off air, and I won't get into numbers. If you live in Buffalo, there might be some drop off in your kilowatt per hour usage just because you got a heater on and you're trudging through the snow. It doesn't mean the car's bad. It's no different than if you're towing on a truck versus driving the truck without payload behind it. That same correlation exists. You know, the unknown for the manufacturers and for the banks is leasing. They don't know what the appetite for a used EV is today because we never had it. It's hard for them to residualize the price of an EV. So those are things we have to adapt to as a dealer franchise system. We're subject to what the bank thinks, the manufacturer, what the public perception is. I got 50% of my friends that will not even want to talk about the other 50 are like, I'm willing to look at it. I shouldn't say 50-50. You know, that's not the right mix at all. I think you got about a 10, 20% appetite for it right now. I will say this, our dealers are just as amped up, and I use the word amped up, to sell electric vehicles they are a gas propulsion engine. Doesn't matter to them. Their job is to find a car that consumer wants, service it if need be, sell the next one, deliver quality service and experience. So whether it runs on Coca-Cola, a Bud Light, and I'm not doing a commercial, or EV, or doesn't matter to them. It's what the consumer wants. So we have to adapt. And they are adapting quicker. But the unknowns, we just don't know. We don't know if they're going to get enough inventory. Right now we have an inventory shortage on all vehicles. It's even more magnified on electric vehicles.
And the infrastructure for charging electric cars it's not like there's a gas station on every corner. They're few and far between. It's getting better, but it's going to be a long time before that infrastructure is convenient the way gas stations are convenient.
Well, technology. I mean, you've got apps now that tell people where chargers are. You've got apps that tell them if they're open. So that we're getting there, you're right. The infrastructure across the country, and particularly in New York, is deficient. I think our elected officials are trying to address that as they push their goals for 2020, 35. So that evolution is just as much as the evolution of building the car. I think that's more critical than the car the consumer is going to buy, is the infrastructure that's going to surround and support what that vehicle can do, how far it can go. We just got through a snowstorm, Phil. A lot of people were stuck in EVs that couldn't go anywhere. I pray that nobody died in an EV because they ran out of gas or electric and they couldn't heat themselves. I don't know that number. I don't want to know that number because it doesn't affect us, but it should look in the planning of long term.
Well, we've got about 1 minute left. We're doing this middle of January, the show. Is this a good time, or is there a better time of the year to look for a car than another time?
Salvage commercial, come to the auto show. You'll see everything under one roof. You'll find about energy vehicles, the energy zone, cars, gas, trucks, RVs, jet skis, you name it. But this is a coming out party for our industry. It allows the consumer to see everything under one roof. It allows them to set the tone for the beginning of the year. They may start shopping and not buy something till March or early April because they want it. when it's spring and nice weather ready. So I think it's always been the perfect. Why do we do the show in February? Because we know that people had enough of the winter. They're starting to think about their spring. They're starting to think about their planning, starting to think about the home improvement and their vehicles. So the timing's always right this time of the year. It's not a bad time to buy a car, but historically there was more money in the incentives right after the auto show. Our manufacturers embrace that because they want to show the goods. So I'm biased. I do run an auto show. I think our dealers are setting up for their 2023 planning. They set their goals, their inventory, their objectives, and they're going to try to come out of the box aggressive.
Okay. Well, you know, Buffalo Auto Show in the Convention Center, February 2nd through the 5th. And it's a tremendous show. And if you're in the market for a car, or even if you just like cars, you can see everything under the sun at the Buffalo Auto Show. And so I highly recommend it. And next week we'll do a show with Paul just about the auto show. We'll talk about what's there, what's going on, and it'll be interesting. Thanks for watching The Big Picture. We're out of time now, but we'll see you next time on The Big Picture. And thanks for watching WBBZ-TV, because we really appreciate it. See you next time.